Hi everyone, we're living a time of big shift in the history of our planet, a paradigm shift. And that is why a lot of our family patterns are being challenged right now in order to be transmuted. So family patterns are passed on from generation to generation through the mother line on one side and the father line on the other. And when a baby is born, it is not born all pure, because during the gestation period it has already received a transmission of beliefs, emotions, and the way the mother perceives her environment. The father also has an influence through his presence and his voice. That's how babies are able to recognize the voice of the father when they are born. And so in a way, when a baby is born, it is already programmed with certain patterns, with certain behavior patterns, certain thought patterns, certain emotions that will influence it during his childhood and during also the adult life. On a soul level, and despite a widespread saying, we do choose our parents and we do choose our family. So a soul will choose specific genes and a specific family line in order to explore the theme that it has chosen. So of course, life incarnation is a way of learning, it's a way of growing and evolving. So for example, if we choose to experience creativity, then it is more likely that we will choose a family of artists. And since challenges are very big catalysts for expansion and growth, we often choose situations where there are a lot of challenges. So for example, if we choose a theme like powerlessness, we can choose a family where, for example, the father is an alcoholic and he beats his wife and his children, so we can experience that. So I'm not usually someone who likes to speak publicly about my private life, but for the sake of this video I'm going to explain to you what happened to me last October, and I'm going to explain to you a bit of my family's history. And of course, since everything is interconnected, what I experience, what I live, resonates with the collective. So what I experienced for a couple of days in October was this intense feeling of deep sadness and grief. And this is a feeling I know very well because during my childhood I have taken on a lot of my parents' pain, and I recognize specifically my father's pain because my father has struggled with severe manic depression and bipolar disorders all his life. And the month of October, which is ironically also my birthday month, was often the period where he would sink into depression and lock himself up in a dark room for weeks and sometimes months. And what I felt was very strongly in my body because I could really feel this, so I really allowed this feeling to run through me, but I really felt it very strongly in my body. I felt as if there was a pressure that was crushing me down from the top, and I felt my heart was so heavy that it was like there was an anchor attached to it and pulling it down. And when I was feeling that, I heard my guides say to me, "Stop holding on to that pain, it doesn't belong to you." And when they said that, I suddenly had a very strong feeling of the presence of my ancestors on my father's side, and with that came a flash of massacres, of fire, of blood, of pain and terror. And following that too, I felt specifically the presence of my great-grandmother, from whom I got my middle name from. So I thought, wow, okay, I've got work to do, like there's a connection going on. So the next day I got a mail from my stepsister, who was forwarding me a discussion she was having with our cousin about our ancestors, about the history of the family line on my father's side. And in that mail there was only one picture, and that picture was one from my great-grandmother, the same. So I thought, wow, that's an incredible synchronicity, and I just love these kinds of synchronicities. So also the mail synthesized a little bit of my family's history, so I could receive confirmation for all the information I got. My father's line is from Ukrainian Jewish descent, and they immigrated to New York in the early 20th century. So they fled all the persecutions and the pogroms that were going on in Ukraine against the Jews at the time, And I really felt this feeling of uprooting, that they were forced to leave their land to go to a foreign land. And of course they arrived at Ellis Island, and then their name was Americanized, so it became Blocker, because originally I think it was something like Blitzker. And ironically, it's sort of a predestined name because I chose a family who is completely blocked emotionally. And so it's always interesting to look at the family name and see, because it can give us clues on what themes we have chosen to experience in this lifetime. I then felt the desire to write my ancestor a letter. So I wrote really everything I had on my mind, and I really opened my heart to them, saying I had really a lot of compassion for their pain. And I said, this is the opportunity for you to free yourselves from this pain, so I can free myself and the whole family line, and also be able not to pass it on to my descendants. And while I was writing, I could still feel very strongly the presence of my great-grandmother. So I connected to her, and I understood that she had not ascended to the light. She was still on the earth plane, stuck with her pain. So this is quite common, by the way. So I did a little ritual to make her ascend, and I also saw that her husband was also stuck. So I guided them both back to the light and continued to write my letter. So once I was done, I just burned the letter and gathered the ashes. And the next morning I brought the ashes and put them into a water stream, asking the water also to help me purify and free the family karma. And I really felt an instant relief when I did that. Today, the science of epigenetics can help us understand how these patterns are passed on from generation to generation. So the researcher in neuroscience, Rachel Yehuda, has made a study about descendants of Holocaust survivors. And she demonstrated that descendants present the same PTSD, so post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms, as their ancestors, may it be parents, grandparents, or ancestors. So this shows how PTSD affects the genes and how it is passed on from generation to generation. So this, of course, is the case for any kind of trauma, may it be war, genocide, persecution, torture, incest, any form of abuse, may it be psychological, emotional, physical. And of course these kind of traumas can be found in very, very many different cultures across the globe. In our Western societies, we have completely lost the connection with our ancestors, as we have lost the connection to spirituality and any form of rituals or rites concerning death or the afterlife. And today we don't honor our elders anymore, we just plug them into homes and we wait for them to die. But when we travel around the world, we see that, especially in traditional cultures, they have really kept this connection with the ancestors. So for example, in certain Asian cultures, they will sometimes dedicate an entire room for the worship of the ancestors, so it's like they are completely part of the home. Same thing with indigenous cultures of Africa, Australia, South America, Native Americans. It is also said in certain Native American tribes that sometimes the ancestor manifests physically to their descendants. And so we can see that really the connection with ancestors has remained a spiritual basis for all these cultures. So there are a lot of different methods to work on the family line, and the first one is, of course, genealogy. So today there are a lot of websites dedicated to that, and it's quite easy to find the family tree. We can also, of course, go to see a professional genealogist. Another well-known technique is family constellations. Family constellations has been created by a German priest named Bert Hellinger, who became a psychotherapist. And he has lived 16 years among the Zulus of South Africa. And he was inspired by their connection with their ancestors and the family line to create this technique called the family constellations, which is like setting the family in the space. So it works like a role-playing game where each participant will channel and play out the character of each member of the family in order to unravel all the subconscious patterns, all the blockages that need to be shown and that we need to be aware of. And so it's a very powerful technique, a very powerful tool, and it's very healing most of the time. We might want to do also hypnotherapy or regression therapy to unravel all these subconscious patterns. And when we do that kind of work, it is not rare that there is a family member or an ancestor that appears during the work. So of course we can also call on our ancestors consciously and ask them to come to help us to free the family karma. But most of the time I think it's really about divine timing. So when it is time, they just present themselves. And when they do so, we might want to do what I did, that is write a letter, being really honest and open-hearted and setting all the intentions we want to set. And once we are done, we can burn this letter, then gather all the ashes, and the next morning we can put them into a natural water stream, so no sink or toilet, and just ask that the karma and all the pain may be liberated. And it's good to do that in the morning at dawn because it symbolizes a new beginning, a new dawn, a new day. So when we feel that there are emotions coming up and we feel that it is connected to our past lineage, to our ancestors, we can also practice the Ho'oponopono because there are specific texts that address the ancestors. Another technique is also to work on cellular memory, of course, because the cells carry information, they carry memories, and so we might want to cleanse that and to liberate that as well. And of course, shamanic work is always connected to spirits and ancestors as well. As far as I'm concerned, I still have the mother line karma to heal, because my grandfather on my mother's side was also Jewish, and he was in the resistance during the World War II and was deported. And it's really funny because I was planning to do this video today, and last night during my dreams I had a little visit from my maternal grandmother who was angry and we had a kind of fight, so I think it might be time for me to heal that line as well. I feel it's really a period where a lot of us are called to do this work on connecting with our ancestors and freeing ourselves from the family karma. And by doing so and connecting with our roots, we actually discover more about ourselves and what we came here to discover and to learn. And in this time of uncertainty, just looking back at our past, at our history, at our roots, really helps us to see what lies ahead of us. And as an African proverb says, when you don't know where you're going, then look from where you came from. I think that we can also ask some assistance from our spiritual guides, and actually most of the time our spiritual guides are also our ancestors from this life or from past lives. And let's not forget that when we work on the inside, it always has an impact on the outside, and especially on the people the closest to us, so our families. Reconnecting with our roots helps us to cope with our burdened past that we might have inherited from generation after generation. And I think that we are the generation that will contribute to cleanse, to purge and heal and liberate all these negative patterns, all this human suffering that has been passed on for centuries, sometimes millennia. And we do that in order really to be able to not pass it on to our descendants, to our children. And so our children will be alleviated from all this heaviness and all this pain, and they will be able to take the reins and continue to anchor this new consciousness on this planet without all this heaviness that we might have felt ourselves during our lives. And our ancestors will not be the source of our problems anymore. They will be our spiritual allies, and they will simply watch over us with love and with compassion from the great beyond. Sat Nam. See you soon.